Have you ever kept a secret so heavy that it felt like carrying a stone in your chest every single day? A secret that made you question your own sanity, your own worth, your own judgment? Well, I did. For 3 years, I gave his mother $380 every single month, and I never told a soul. Not my best friend, not my sister, not even my own mother, who would call me every Sunday, asking how I was managing my bills. I would smile through the phone, lie through my teeth, and pretend everything was fine, while I was drowning in a situation I never saw coming. The weight of that secret became part of me, like a second skin I couldn't shed, a burden I carried in silence because I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was being a good girlfriend, a supportive partner, someone who understood family obligations and respected the bond between a mother and her son. I thought I was building a future, investing in a relationship that would one day become a marriage, a family of my own. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have possibly imagined in my worst nightmares, was that every single dollar I sent her was funding a lie so elaborate, so cruel, so calculated that when I finally discovered the truth, it didn't just break my heart. It shattered my entire perception of reality. Let me take you back to where this all started, because to understand the depth of this betrayal, you need to know how deeply I loved him, how completely I trusted him, and how masterfully they both played me. It was a rainy October evening when I first met Marcus. I remember because I was standing under the awning of a coffee shop, waiting for the downpour to ease, and he walked up beside me with this smile that could light up the darkest room. We started talking about the weather, then books, then everything and nothing all at once. There was something magnetic about him, something that made me feel like I had known him in another lifetime. Within weeks, we were inseparable. He was everything I thought I wanted: charming, attentive, romantic in ways I had only read about in novels. He would leave little notes in my bag when I wasn't looking, surprise me with my favorite takeout after long work days, and listen to me talk about my dreams with genuine interest in his eyes. 6 months into our relationship, he introduced me to his mother, Linda. She lived alone in a modest apartment across town, and from the moment I met her, I could sense a certain fragility about her. She was soft-spoken, almost timid, with eyes that seemed to carry decades of sadness. Marcus explained that his father had left when he was young, that his mother had sacrificed everything to raise him, working multiple jobs while dealing with chronic health issues that had only worsened with age. He painted a picture of a woman who had given up her own happiness for her son's future, and my heart immediately went out to her. During that first dinner at her place, she made this incredible homemade lasagna, and as we ate, she told stories about Marcus as a child with such love and pride that I felt honored to be sitting at that table. She showed me photo albums filled with Little League pictures, school plays, and graduation ceremonies where she stood alone beside him, beaming with single-parent pride. By the end of the evening, I felt connected to her in a way that surprised me. I saw her not just as his mother, but as a woman who had struggled and survived, who deserved respect and care in her later years. Marcus held my hand as we drove home that night and said something that would echo in my mind for years to come. "She really likes you. She doesn't open up to people easily, but I could tell she felt comfortable with you. That means everything to me." The warmth in his voice, the genuine emotion, it made me feel like I was becoming part of something special, something real. The first time money came up was about 8 months into our relationship. We were lying in bed on a lazy Sunday morning, and Marcus seemed unusually quiet, staring at the ceiling with a worried expression that I hadn't seen before. When I asked what was wrong, he hesitated, then sighed deeply before telling me that his mother was struggling financially. Her medical bills were piling up, he explained, and her fixed income from disability barely covered her rent and medications. He said he had been helping her as much as he could, but his own expenses were tight, and he felt terrible watching her stress about money at her age. The way he talked about it wasn't manipulative or demanding. It was vulnerable, almost ashamed, like he was embarrassed to even bring it up. He never asked me for anything directly. Instead, he just shared his worry, his guilt about not being able to do more for the woman who had done everything for him. And something inside me, that part of me that always wanted to fix things, to help, to be the solution, immediately started thinking about what I could do. I thought about my own mother, about how I would feel if she were struggling and I couldn't help her. I imagined myself in Marcus's position, torn between my own financial limitations and my love for a parent who needed me. Without him asking, without any pressure from him at all, I offered to help. I told him I could send his mother a few $100s a month just to ease some of the burden, to help with groceries or utilities or whatever she needed most. The look of relief on his face was something I'll never forget. His eyes actually welled up with tears, and he pulled me into the tightest embrace, whispering, "Thank you" over and over into my hair. In that moment, I felt like a hero. I felt like I was doing something meaningful, something that proved my love wasn't just words but actions. I felt like I was investing in our future together, showing him that I was the kind of partner who would stand by him through difficulties, who understood that family comes first, who could be trusted with the hard stuff. Looking back now, I can see how perfectly orchestrated that moment was, how carefully the groundwork had been laid. But back then, all I felt was love and purpose. The arrangement started simply enough. Every month, on the first day, I would transfer $380 to Linda's account. Marcus had given me her banking information, explaining that it would be easier and more discreet this way. He didn't want her to feel embarrassed or indebted, so we agreed that I would send the money directly, and she would assume it was coming from him, or from both of us as a couple. It seemed thoughtful at the time, a way to preserve her dignity while still providing help. The amount was calculated, Marcus had explained, to cover her monthly medication copays and supplement her grocery budget without being so much that she would question where it was coming from. $380. It became as automatic as paying my own rent. I would wake up on the first of each month, open my banking app before I even got out of bed, and transfer the money while I was still half asleep. Then I would go about my day, my week, my life, carrying this secret act of generosity like a badge of honor that only Marcus and I knew about. The money came from what I had been saving for a down payment on a car. I had been driving the same beat-up sedan since college, dreaming of the day I could afford something reliable, something that didn't require constant repairs and prayers every time I turned the key. But I convinced myself that this was more important, that Linda's health and well-being mattered more than my comfort, that I could always save for a car later, after we were married, after our finances were combined and we could tackle these things together. I started picking up extra shifts at work, saying yes to every overtime opportunity, skipping lunches to save money, buying generic brands and shopping at discount stores, all so I could maintain my own expenses while keeping up with these monthly payments. My friends would suggest weekend trips or nice dinners, and I would make excuses about being tired or busy, never revealing the real reason I was constantly broke. My credit card balance slowly crept up as I used it to cover gaps in my own budget, telling myself it was temporary, that things would get better, that this sacrifice would be worth it in the end. But here's what really gets me, what makes my stomach turn even now when I think about it: the gratitude. Every few weeks, Marcus would tell me how much his mother appreciated the help, how her stress levels had decreased, how she was sleeping better knowing she could afford her medications without choosing between pills and food. He would relay messages from her, things she supposedly said about how blessed she felt, how she prayed for me every night, how she told him he had found a real gem in me. Sometimes he would even call me while he was at her apartment, and I could hear her voice in the background, thin and fragile, thanking God for the help she was receiving. Those moments filled me with such warmth, such validation, such certainty, that I was doing something genuinely good in a world that often felt cold and selfish. I felt connected to Linda in a way that went beyond just being my boyfriend's girlfriend. I felt like I was her guardian angel, her secret benefactor, the person ensuring she could live with dignity and comfort in her retirement years. Marcus would hold me extra tight on those nights, would look at me with such tenderness and admiration, would tell me that he couldn't wait to marry me, to build a life with me, to someday repay all the kindness I was showing his family. He talked about our future like it was inevitable, like we were already bound together by more than just love, by actual sacrifice and commitment and shared responsibility. He would mention houses we would buy, children we would have, the life we would build where his mother could live with us in a guest house, where she would help raise our kids, and finally be taken care of the way she deserved. And I bought into every word of it. I saw that future so clearly it felt like a memory rather than a dream. Around the 1-year mark of making these payments, small things started to feel off, though I didn't recognize them as red flags at the time. Marcus would occasionally mention his mother's shopping trips or new purchases in passing, a new television she had bought on sale, a weekend trip she took with her church group, a complete bedroom set she had replaced. Each time he would explain it away. The TV was a floor model clearance. The trip was paid for by the church. The bedroom set was a gift from a wealthy friend. I would nod and smile, happy that she was able to enjoy some luxuries despite her financial struggles, never questioning how someone who supposedly needed $380 a month for basic necessities could afford these extras. I had compartmentalized the information, accepting his explanations without critical thought because I trusted him completely, because I loved him without reservation, because the idea that he would lie to me about something like this was incomprehensible. There were also moments when Marcus would get defensive if I asked too many questions about his mother's finances or health. If I inquired about her doctor's appointments or which medications she was taking or whether she had applied for additional assistance programs, he would get this edge to his voice, this barely concealed irritation that would make me immediately back off. He would say things like, "I don't want to burden you with all the details," or "Let me handle my mother's situation," or "You're already doing so much, don't worry about the rest." At the time, I interpreted this as him being protective of me, not wanting to dump all his family's problems on my shoulders, trying to shield me from stress. I respected his boundaries, stepped back, continued sending the money without asking questions, trusting that he knew best when it came to his own mother. But what I was actually experiencing was isolation from information, a deliberate effort to keep me in the dark, to maintain the story without letting me get close enough to see the cracks in it. The discovery came on a random Tuesday afternoon in a way so unexpected that I still sometimes wonder what would have happened if I had taken a different route home that day, if I had been 5 minutes earlier or later, if the universe hadn't decided that exact moment was when I needed to know the truth. I had left work early with a migraine, the kind that made light feel like knives and sound like hammers, and I just wanted to get home, take some medication, and lie down in a dark room. I was driving through a part of town I didn't usually frequent, taking a shortcut recommended by my GPS to avoid construction, when I saw her, Linda, his mother, the woman I had been financially supporting for over 2 years. She was walking out of an upscale salon, the kind with crystal chandeliers visible through the windows and valet parking out front, the kind where a basic haircut costs more than I spent on groceries in a week. Her hair was freshly styled in an elaborate updo, and she was wearing a designer outfit I recognized from a boutique window downtown, complete with shoes and a handbag that probably cost more than 2 months of the payments I had been sending her. But that wasn't even the worst part. She was laughing, animated and energetic, talking on her phone with the kind of vibrant enthusiasm I had never seen in person during our limited interactions. This wasn't the frail, struggling woman who supposedly could barely afford her medications. This was someone who looked healthy, wealthy, and completely unburdened by financial stress. My hands started shaking on the steering wheel. My migraine suddenly felt distant compared to the pounding of my heart. I pulled over into a parking lot across the street and just watched her, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, trying to find an explanation that would make this okay, that would align with everything Marcus had told me. Maybe she had won a small lottery. Maybe a relative had died and left her money. Maybe this was a one-time splurge after months of sacrifice. But even as I grasped for these rationalizations, something deeper inside me was cracking open. Some protective shell of denial was breaking apart, and the truth was beginning to seep in like poison. I sat in that parking lot for nearly an hour, watching Linda browse shop windows, meet up with a friend for coffee at an expensive cafe, laughing and shopping like someone without a care in the world. Every moment I watched felt like another piece of my reality crumbling. When she finally got into a car, a relatively new model sedan, not the old beat-up vehicle Marcus had described her driving, I felt something inside me shift from confusion to cold, crystallizing anger. I didn't confront her. I didn't call Marcus. Instead, I went home, took screenshots of every single bank transfer I had made over the past 2 years, and started doing research. I looked up Linda's address and public records and found that she owned her home outright. No mortgage. A property that had been in her name for over 15 years. I searched her name on social media, something I had never thought to do before, and found her Facebook profile filled with photos of vacations, restaurants, shopping hauls, and check-ins at spas and resorts. Her profile wasn't set to private. Anyone could see that this was not a woman struggling to afford basic necessities. There were photos of her with friends at wine tastings, images of elaborate home-cooked meals in a kitchen that had clearly been recently renovated, posts about her book club and her pottery classes, and her weekend trips to the mountains. The comments on her posts were from friends congratulating her on her well-deserved retirement and her beautiful life. I scrolled back through years of posts, and nowhere, not once, was there any mention of financial struggle, medical crisis, or hardship of any kind. What I found instead was evidence of a comfortable, active, socially engaged woman who was living significantly better than I was, funded in part by money I could barely afford to give. The confrontation with Marcus happened that same night. I had spent the afternoon oscillating between rage and disbelief, between wanting to scream and wanting to cry, between planning exactly what to say and feeling too overwhelmed to form coherent thoughts. When he came over for our usual Tuesday dinner, I was sitting on my couch with my laptop open, surrounded by printed bank statements and screenshots of his mother's social media. He walked in with Chinese takeout and that easy smile, calling out a greeting that died on his lips when he saw my face. I watched the color drain from his skin, watched his eyes dart from the papers to the screen to my expression, and I saw the exact moment he realized that the game was over. He tried to play it off at first, acting confused, asking what was wrong with genuine-seeming concern. But when I turned my laptop around to show him a photo of his mother at a resort in Cancun, dated just 2 months prior, his whole demeanor changed. The mask slipped. The loving, vulnerable boyfriend disappeared, and what remained was someone I didn't recognize, someone cold and calculating and caught. I asked him point blank to explain the discrepancy between the struggling, sick woman he had described and the vibrant, affluent woman living her best life on social media. I demanded to know where my money had actually been going, what the $380 a month had really been funding, why he had lied to me for over 2 years. And his response, the words that came out of his mouth, were somehow worse than the lie itself. He said, "She needed help with her lifestyle, not her survival. What's the difference?" As if my intent didn't matter. As if deceiving me about the purpose of my sacrifice was irrelevant. As if I should be okay with funding his mother's luxury expenses under the guise of medical necessity. The argument that followed was brutal and revealing in ways I never expected. When Marcus realized that playing dumb wasn't working, that I had actual evidence and wouldn't be gaslit into doubting what I had seen, he shifted tactics. He tried to minimize what he had done, suggesting that I was overreacting, that his mother did have medical expenses, just not as many as he had implied, and that he had never technically lied, just framed things in a way that would make sense to me. When I pushed back on that obvious manipulation, he got defensive, accusing me of being selfish, of nickel and diming his mother, of acting like $380 a month was some enormous sacrifice when I had a decent job and no dependents. He actually said to me, "You were never going to miss that money anyway. Look at how easily you've been paying it for 2 years." As if the ease with which I had managed to send money despite my own financial struggles was proof that I could afford to be deceived. When I pointed out that the issue wasn't the amount but the lie, the complete betrayal of trust, the manipulation of my empathy and love, he switched to the guilt approach. He reminded me of everything he had done for me, every kind gesture, every romantic moment, every time he had been there for me, as if those things were transactional, as if love was a ledger where his emotional support entitled him to my money under false pretenses. He brought up times I had needed him, moments when I had been struggling and he had helped me, trying to frame my monthly payments as simply returning the favor, as if being emotionally supportive to your girlfriend was equivalent to financially defrauding her. But the moment that broke me completely, the moment when I knew without any doubt that I had to end this relationship, was when he said, "My mother deserves nice things. She raised me alone, she sacrificed for me, and if you really loved me, you would want her to be happy, regardless of whether she actually needs the money." Have you ever experienced something so profoundly wrong that it changes your understanding of a person entirely? Comment below if you've ever discovered someone you loved was completely different than who you thought they were. The days following that confrontation were some of the darkest of my life. I felt like I was mourning multiple deaths simultaneously. The death of the relationship I thought I had, the death of the future I had envisioned, the death of my own judgment and trust in my ability to read people. I had been so certain of Marcus, so convinced that what we had was real and special and built on honesty. To discover that for over 2 years I had been living in a carefully constructed illusion was devastating in ways I still struggle to articulate. I looked back on every sweet moment, every tender gesture, every promise about our future, and questioned what had been genuine and what had been performance. Had he ever really loved me? Or had I just been a convenient source of funding for his mother's lifestyle? Had any of it been real? Or had I been playing a role in a script I didn't know existed? The financial aspect was significant too. When I calculated the total amount I had sent over those 2 years, it came to over $9,000. $9,000 that could have been my emergency fund, my new car, my savings account, my financial security. $9,000 that I had sacrificed thinking I was helping someone in desperate need, only to discover I had been funding spa days and vacations and home renovations for a woman who didn't need my help at all. I felt humiliated, used, and furious at myself for not seeing it sooner, for not asking more questions, for being so eager to prove my love that I had bypassed my own common sense. Friends and family who learned what happened had mixed reactions. Some were sympathetic, telling me I couldn't have known, that I was kind-hearted and had been taken advantage of. Others, less tactfully, asked how I could have been so naive, why I hadn't verified Linda's situation before sending thousands of dollars, how I had let myself be manipulated for so long. Their judgment, even when well-intentioned, felt like salt in an open wound. I withdrew from social activities, stopped answering calls, spent weekends alone replaying the relationship in my mind, trying to pinpoint the exact moments when I should have known, the red flags I had ignored, the warning signs I had rationalized away. But somewhere in that darkness, something else began to emerge. Anger. Not just at Marcus and Linda for what they had done, but at myself for allowing it, for making myself small and accommodating and selfless to the point of self-destruction. I started to recognize patterns in my own behavior that had made me vulnerable to this kind of manipulation. My tendency to prioritize others' needs over my own, my fear of seeming selfish or uncaring, my deep-seated belief that love required sacrifice, and that the more I sacrificed, the more worthy of love I became. I realized that Marcus hadn't just stumbled upon a gullible victim. He had identified someone whose own insecurities and people-pleasing tendencies made her perfect for this kind of exploitation. And that realization, painful as it was, became the beginning of my transformation. I decided that I wasn't going to be defined by what had been done to me, but by how I chose to respond to it. I could stay bitter and victimized, or I could use this experience as a catalyst for change, for growth, for becoming someone who would never allow herself to be used like that again. I started therapy, something I probably should have done years earlier, and began unpacking not just this relationship, but the underlying patterns that had led me into it. My therapist helped me understand that my generosity wasn't inherently bad, but that it needed to be paired with boundaries, with discernment, with a clear understanding that giving from a place of guilt or obligation or the desire to prove my worth wasn't actually generosity at all. It was self-abandonment. We worked on helping me distinguish between genuine compassion and the performance of compassion, between supporting someone because I wanted to and supporting someone because I felt I had to in order to be valued. I also decided to pursue legal action, not because I thought I would recover the money, but because I needed to assert that what had been done to me was wrong and had consequences. I consulted with a lawyer who specialized in fraud, and while she was sympathetic, she was also realistic about my chances. Without explicit written statements from Marcus promising to use the money for specific medical purposes, it would be difficult to prove fraud versus a gift given voluntarily. The fact that I had transferred the money willingly, without a contract or agreement about how it would be used, worked against me legally, even though morally I had been wronged. However, the lawyer did help me draft a formal letter to both Marcus and Linda, clearly stating that I had been led to believe my payments were for medical necessities and elder care, that I now understood this to be false, and that I expected repayment of the full amount, plus interest. I didn't actually expect them to pay, and they didn't, but sending that letter felt empowering. It was me officially saying, I see what you did, I name it as wrong, and I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen to keep the peace. Marcus responded with a nasty email calling me vindictive and claiming I was trying to ruin his mother's life over money I had given freely. Linda never responded at all, which told me everything I needed to know about her character and her level of remorse. I blocked them both on every platform, deleted every photo, donated or trashed everything that reminded me of Marcus, and made a conscious decision to close that chapter of my life completely. No lingering contact, no, maybe we can be friends, no leaving doors open for explanations or apologies that would never satisfy me anyway. The healing process was neither linear nor quick. There were days when I felt strong and empowered, certain that I had dodged a bullet and grateful to have discovered the truth before marriage or children tied me to Marcus permanently. And there were days when I felt devastated all over again, when I would see a couple being affectionate and wonder if that had ever been real for me, when I would question whether I could ever trust anyone again, when the loneliness felt crushing and I missed even the illusion of love I had been living in. I had to resist the urge to check Marcus's social media, to see if he had moved on, to torture myself with evidence of him being happy while I was still processing the pain he had caused. I had to learn how to sit with uncomfortable emotions instead of immediately trying to fix them or make them go away. I had to accept that some questions would never be answered. I would never fully know what Marcus's true feelings had been, whether he had felt any guilt about deceiving me, whether he and his mother had laughed about how easy I was to manipulate, and I had to make peace with the fact that not knowing was okay, that I didn't need their truth to move forward with mine. Slowly, over months that turned into a year, I began to rebuild. I focused on my friendships, reconnecting with people I had neglected during my relationship with Marcus. I started pursuing hobbies I had abandoned because they didn't fit into our couple routine. I got the car I had been saving for before I started sending money to Linda, and driving it felt like a small victory, a reclaiming of the dreams I had deferred. I even started dating again, cautiously and with much better boundaries, learning to recognize the difference between healthy vulnerability and manipulation, between genuine need and manufactured crisis. Looking back now, from a place of healing and growth, I can see that experience as a brutal but necessary teacher. It taught me that good intentions without wisdom can lead to exploitation, that love without boundaries becomes self-destruction, that generosity without discernment can be weaponized against you. It taught me to ask questions, to verify situations before committing resources, to recognize when someone's story doesn't quite add up even if I want desperately to believe it. It taught me that the right person will never ask me to sacrifice my financial security or lie to my loved ones, that healthy relationships are built on transparency and mutual support, not on secret payments and manufactured emergencies. Most importantly, it taught me about my own resilience, my ability to survive betrayal and come out stronger, my capacity to learn from pain without becoming hardened by it. The version of me that existed before Marcus would have been destroyed by that betrayal, would have let it confirm all her worst fears about being unlovable or unworthy. But the version of me that emerged from it understood that his actions reflected his character, not my value, that being manipulated didn't make me stupid or weak, it made me human and hopeful, qualities I refused to let him take from me. I also learned to forgive myself for not seeing it sooner, for the ways I had ignored my intuition, for the questions I hadn't asked. Self-compassion became as important as the boundaries I was learning to set, because beating myself up for past mistakes only kept me trapped in that victim mentality, unable to move forward into the empowered person I was becoming. Today, when I think about that $380 a month, I don't just see it as money I lost. I see it as the price I paid for one of life's most important lessons, that you can be kind without being foolish, generous without being gullible, loving without losing yourself. I see it as an investment in my own education about human nature, about my own patterns and weaknesses, about the importance of trusting but verifying, of leading with love but protecting myself with wisdom. Would I prefer to have learned that lesson differently, without the financial loss and emotional devastation? Absolutely. But since I can't change the past, I choose to extract every possible benefit from that pain, to ensure that those 2 years of deception weren't just a waste but a transformation. And you know what? I'm genuinely happy now in ways I never was with Marcus, even during the good times. I'm in a relationship with someone who values transparency, who shares openly about his life and finances, who would never ask me to sacrifice my security for his comfort, who sees my generosity as something to cherish and protect, not exploit. I have savings again, financial stability that brings peace of mind I didn't even know I was missing during those years of constant financial stress. I have friendships that are deeper and more authentic because I'm showing up as my whole self, not as the perpetually accommodating people-pleaser I used to be. I have self-respect and self-trust that were forged in the fire of that betrayal and came out stronger than steel. If you're reading this and you've been through something similar, if you've been manipulated, used, lied to by someone you trusted completely, I want you to know that it's not your fault. Being kind-hearted doesn't make you naive. Wanting to help doesn't make you stupid. Trusting someone you love doesn't make you weak. What happened to you says everything about their character and nothing about your worth. And while the pain is real and the betrayal is devastating and the healing takes time, you will survive this. You will emerge from it wiser and stronger and more aligned with who you're meant to be. Don't let their actions steal your ability to love, to trust, to be generous and open-hearted. Just pair those beautiful qualities with wisdom, with boundaries, with a commitment to honoring yourself as much as you honor others. Have you been through a similar betrayal, where someone you loved took advantage of your kindness? Share your story in the comments below. You're not alone in this, and your experience might help someone else who's struggling right now. And if this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own relationships or boundaries or patterns, please leave a like to let me know it reached you. Understanding these experiences, learning from each other's stories, recognizing manipulation and betrayal for what they are, these things matter deeply because they protect us and empower us to build better, healthier lives. If you want to hear more stories like this, real experiences from real people navigating the complexities of relationships, family dynamics, betrayal, and healing, please subscribe to Living Through It. This channel is dedicated to sharing authentic, vulnerable stories that remind us we're not alone, that others have walked similar paths and found their way through. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story that might change your perspective or give you the courage to make the changes you've been afraid to make. Thank you for being here, for listening, for witnessing this part of my journey. Your presence and engagement mean more than you know. Remember, you deserve honesty, you deserve respect, and you deserve a love that builds you up instead of tearing you down. Never settle for less, and never let anyone convince you that being used is the same as being loved.